Five, four. Hello, hello,
Three,
hello,
two.
hello.
Good morning, Mr. Novak. How are we?
Yeah, good. This morning. Let's go.
Let's get ripping. Action. Welcome to Morning Minutes with myself, Michael Bergio, and Mark Novak. And this
Yes,
morning, we're going to be talking about illegal structures, illegal incomes, being
yes.
naughty in property. Um,
Naughty. And you know what?
suppose we
Nobody
should
wants to
do a
talk about this topic, but we will today.
yeah, because we'll go where others will not for the people.
No one wants to talk about illegal structures. No one wants to talk about illegal incomes, but a lot of landlords, a lot of people have them.
It's huge. So, Mark, run us through what are some illegal incomes that we have seen and structures. Let's start maybe on the residential side. What do people do?
Granny flat.
Granny flat.
So granny flats in the backyard. Now they've only the last 8 years there's been an instrument where if it's compliant and under 60 meters squared, council will approve it. But for 50 or 100 years or even more,
Mm.
we've had them in existence. So we as real estate agents, we don't know if they're compliant or not compliant, but
Mm.
people rent them. They give it to us to rent, and we rent them out. And as far as a real estate agent's concerned, we understand. It's not our job to find compliance in properties. That's what council's for, or compliance officers are for. But our function is to get them rented. We get them rented. But since then, I found out like there was never an instrument over the years for granny flats to be like thumbs up.
Mm.
And people generated 20 grand a year from these granny flats, 100,000 over 5 years,
It's big money, hey?
200,000 over. It's big, isn't it? It's really, really big. And there's risk because if the event of someone hurting themselves, if the event of fire, the problem's on the owner.
Yeah, and that's where like you can sort of see why people do it. And I reckon it probably started maybe with the internal room being rented out that you may not use or a part of the house. Like we see probably two styles of granny flats, Mark. Maybe a two-story home and then they've got downstairs, which was never used, and they've just put in a kitchen and closed it off. And from the outside, how's really anyone going to know that someone else is living there, which is paying and it's not sort of included? Very hard to tell from the inside, but it can be a game changer for an owner. Like you see why they do it, where a lot of the time, if you've got a principal residence, it's not really helping you, if you know what I mean, financially. Like it's your home, you can't really do much with it. But for the ability to get 200, 300, 5, 6, $700 a week additional income, it's big money. And when rates keep going up and things like that, owners are looking for this more and more now. And then
The
did
edge.
it start with the internal granny flat more so and then the external structure? Where did that come from, the external one? Or was it people converting a garage into a granny flat? Can you recall like where you started seeing
From the
something happen and
olden
then
from the olden
yeah,
days. Yeah,
back in the day, back in
that's
your day,
when
Mark?
everything was black and white pictures. You know what? It was conversions. People just desperately needed to generate an income. They had more space in their home, and off they went. Now, what amuses me is what's the difference when I rent out my bedroom?
Mm.
Just because I've put a kitchenette or a kitchen in my illegal flat, like what's the difference between making something a bedroom to sleep in and renting that out? Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
there
like an
are,
additional living room. Are you referring to? You may have two living rooms and just
yeah, and you may rent that out, or people. There's, if you actually think about it, this is really interesting. If you actually think about it, there's no limit to the amount of bodies you can sleep in a house or a unit,
yeah, it's
right?
true.
There's none. Just because
I.e.
it's a
legislation, is that what you're referring
yeah,
to? There's nowhere in
yeah,
any document says you cannot have more than 30 people live in a residential home. Is that what you're
none.
saying? Yeah.
Correct. You know, the reality is people don't do it. That's why there's no problem. But if you really have a good think about it, guys, have a think about it. There's really nothing stopping you in a 2-bedroom unit from sleeping 10 people. You know, and I would have thought that's bloody illegal. But if you're smart enough to generate income out of a 2-bedroom unit and get 10 people to pay your rent, rich to you in this day and age. But that's why I think the whole granny flat thing and the illegal income thing sometimes falls on its bum, because you can do much more worse things that are compliant.
Yeah, good point. So it's like, imagine keeping the same house, one kitchen, nothing there, but in the bedrooms you've got 10 bunk beds, 10 people, but the structure, nothing's changed. It's what's been approved. It's there, but you've got 10 people sleeping there. Or you build, so that's where the catch is, or you build a different structure and you house them, and it makes it, and it's private, an extra person out the back, but that's illegal because the structure hasn't been approved. But having 10 people in one room isn't. So it's almost like, oh, well, I'd rather do the illegal structure because it's a far better outcome. It's safer, it's more realistic, but you're right, it's illegal. So what's
look, I may be wrong on my laws, but I've been an agent for 27 years. I'm talking about my observations. It's definitely not advice to people out there.
Oh, Mark, we've got Paul on here. Remember Paul Smith, Paul Koala from Rate My Agent, who won Rate My. What did you win, Paul? Agent of this? It was suburb.
Paul Smith.
Paul
Smith.
Smith.
Yeah,
had a good laugh.
Legend. How are you, Paul? Congratulations. This is an icon from the industry. Is watching.
Thank you for watching.
For people who've just tuned in, if Paul's just tuned in, we're talking about illegal structures and illegal incomes, and we're a little bit amused almost by the topic as well, because we're so exposed to this, and these guys literally, these naughty people get away with murder for a very long time. They bank the money. They don't have any issues with neighbours. They don't have any issues with council. And that's how granny flats used to be for 50 years. Do you know what I mean? Granny flats were built. They were built well. They weren't compliant. And now there's an instrument the last 8 years where you could get compliance if it's under 60 metres squared, and if the block's under 450 metres squared, over 450 metres squared. So then there's been compliance around it. But look, I'm intrigued because, Michael, okay, that's one example of a structure. Let's use another one. You had mezzanines in the warehouses or something, or have you got anything else?
Yes. So with commercial property, a big one is factories. So you've got a strata complex, and you imagine 6 metre high ceilings, and they generally have a little bit that's been made into office, 30 square metre office. But what we see very, very, very often is, let's say the user, they now have extra staff, they need more floor space, they may not need height and racking. What they do is they basically build the whole new floor into the property, which is turning 100 square meters into 200 square meters in the same property. That's like having a 2-bedroom apartment making into a 4. It works for them, but there's sometimes a lot of, and by all means, basically, I reckon 95% of people don't go to council, because when you do a fit out for commercial, you generally don't.
Now, something's just lightning bolt, Michael, on this one. Lightning bolt on this one. What's stopping me from putting a shelf and storing pallets on it?
Nothing.
What's the difference?
In council, structurally, nothing.
Correct. So what I'm saying is, to build the mezzanine in a warehouse and add more floor area to a building is illegal in a warehouse, but to build a floor where you can store, to build a shelf that you can store pallets on is okay.
Yeah, the fit out, because with council you don't need to. Yeah, you get the usage approved, but you don't need to let them know where every table and chair is, basically.
No. So if you want to build 3 shelves to store pallets on, and you want them to be in gold, or you want them to be gibrocked, or you want them to be steel, or what's stopping you? So it's really interesting. Because you know how there's that saying, it's easier to beg for forgiveness than to beg for permission, than to get permission, whatever that saying is. Like, it just goes to show a lot of these cats that we're dealing with, they're not asking for permission. They're just doing what they do. No one's ever pulling them up because there's this grey area. Again, I'm not supporting illegal structures. I'm not supporting illegal income. It's just an observation.
Yes, and now I'll bring up on the screen, Mark. I've got, let me see when it syncs. I brought up, if people are wondering what it is in a factory, I'm bringing it up. Let me show you on Facebook. Sorry, Instagram, you won't be able to see this, but I'm showing you what it typically looks like when it comes through. Okay, here we go. So typical in Warriewood, you can see the factory from the outside. Looks, you don't know what's in any of them. Then we go to the image on the right, video, complex. Okay. So here you can see the photo that's taken from the back where you've got your concrete, and above you, you can see the structure that they have installed into the property, and that's what we're referring to.
So is that a mezzanine installed for storage, or is that a floor that people can operate a business from, and there's a risk of fire?
Yes, both run the business from this one. So. But well, actually, it had multiple tenants over the time. It's been used as both. So a lot of these are all engineered. I rarely come across one approved by council, but everyone wants the safety aspect covered. So they do have it built by an engineer. There's a perfect image of it, Mark. There we go. You can see. Okay. You can see how that first floor.
So they've got a beautiful height in the factory. They want to utilize that height by putting a mezzanine in, which is like another floor. That's illegal?
Yes.
Okay. But that's legal if it's there for storage, for pallet racking. Call that pallet racking. That's okay.
I think it still may be, but we'll have to have a look at it in that aspect.
Ever had a fire problem?
No, I've never had one, never heard of one.
So no one's ever been hurt?
No. And with the weight of them, they're engineered, they're secured. The only difference is the reason why people, and you may go, why don't people go through council? There's a couple of reasons. The time, a lot of these guys have a business and they need it now, so they can build this in a week, but for council, it may take 3 to 6 months to get it done.
And council wants parking, an extra couple of parking spaces if you're adding metre squared to your shop.
And every square metre additional, you've got to add parking. It's because the risk of people falling down. That's why it's illegal. No,
so these cats are doing it for storage.
Yes.
Not adding meterage squared to their to operate their business. They're doing it for storage.
Said it's is it because the risk of people falling down? Is that's why it's illegal? No, it's illegal because it's a structure that hasn't been approved by council to be there. It's not really obviously if it's not approved by council, it doesn't have this. They say it's for safety, but the reason is it's more you're adding square meterage and you don't have parking. That's the biggest thing to it. It's the more square meters, the more parking. Just
allow me to give an example. Do it in concrete. Completely fire-wise, it would be great. Weight-wise, it would be weight. Do it in concrete. Even if you did it in concrete, completely BCA, Building Code of Australia, meets all of those things. The problem is adding meterage squared to your lot.
Correct. Yep. And the reason why people don't do it in concrete is because they understand they haven't gone through council. If someone knocks on their door and says remove it, they do it in the timber or metal frame because it can be disassembled a lot easier. Where the concrete one, a lot more of a cost, more of a permanent structure.
Ever seen it happen?
I've never seen one being removed. No.
Because they're storage.
And to be honest, it's like Pittwater Road. All the awnings on Pittwater Road are overhanging, are basically illegal, but you don't see council going and knocking on your door asking everyone to redo it. I think there's a line between councils in our area where it's a bit like no one speaks of it. So
look, I think when it comes to compliance, like I think no one's really compliant. I think not a person. and not a building. Like
Yes.
if you want to find issues with compliance with a human or with a like just driving, for example, if a police officer follows someone for 1 hour, or anybody for 1 hour, I will guarantee you they will find a reason to ping them. Compliance is
So
real.
true.
You know what I mean?
So
Like,
true.
if you follow me in a conversation of something that I say, and you are the best lawyer in Australia, you will have an issue with one thing that I say.
Yeah.
So I just think at the end of the day, if we're chasing, and Australians are very good at chasing compliance, i.e., our lockout laws of Sydney, we've got to be careful. We've got to be really careful.
And it's that fine line. It's one of those things. Our best. How do we say? So our clients who probably are the most that we would say are the most successful in property, all look for ways to have additional income above and beyond what the property is or what it previously was. It's just a common thing I see in every landlord who has 4, 5, 10, 20 properties, buildings. It's just they always look at it going, okay, this is how the box everyone else looks at it and does with it, and how can I do it differently to create more income? And if you're doing that with every property in every scenario, it may be an extra $50, $200 per property. Multiply that over 10 properties. That's an extra 2,000. That's what I see.
Yeah, like I've got an old client that doesn't insure anything. And right, so he goes to me.
Yeah, good point. Talk this one through.
And I'm like, dude, and this is about compliance, and what we're talking about today is illegal structures and illegal incomes. And what I'm talking about is running the gauntlet, which is this insurance example. So he's like, let's do the example. I said, sure. Because he had a very expensive Lexus uninsured. I was just like, no way. And he goes, he's got to have third party, obviously, because legally you've got to have third party. But if his vehicle is damaged, he has to pay for it. And he goes, Mark, you got a calculator? I said, yes. He said, get it out. Got it out. And he said, put in. He said, put in. He said, put in. He said, put in $1,500. I said, yes. And he said, put in 65 years of how long I've been, because he's 80 something. He said, how long I've been driving cars for. Think about the numbers. There was 200 grand sitting there on car insurance. And he goes, now imagine if I invested 20,000 of that 50 years ago. He goes, I would rather buy a property and call that my car insurance. And in case something ever went wrong, I would sell that property. And I was like, whoa. So instead of giving the money to the insurance company, you're giving it to yourself in case of emergency. He said, correct. He said, that $1,500, I didn't keep it in my pocket. I invested it in case of emergency. And I was like, wow. And he said, I can show you how I did that with properties, with life insurance, with car insurance, with all that stuff. Wow.
It's big. And we've got another client who does the same, because their whole thing is like tenant insurance. We've said this before, Mark. It's great if you've got one property or two properties. But if you've got 10 or 15 properties, 20 properties, and you're paying $250 for, I think, $300 property for tenant insurance, you multiply that by 20 properties, it adds up, and you're like, it's not worth me having it. I'd rather, if a tenant stops paying, so you kick him out, you lose a bit of rent and the time, but you just get a new tenant in there. But we've said it, when did we say? We said it, Mark, if you're not in a position with that, like the rental insurance one, if you're not in a position that you could cover that cash though, say if you are week to week, then yes, that insurance is vital, because if you're kicking out a tenant or a tenant won't leave residentially and you've got no income, then you got to kick them out. It could be 2 months, 3 months without income. But if you've still got that mortgage to pay and you don't have cash to take it from anywhere else, that's where the insurance can really come in. But if
Yep.
you're fortunate enough to have a bit of that positive cash flow and positive, where you can use money from another property or savings to cover the period you have that tenant or bad tenant, then you don't need the insurance, basically.
All right, let's wrap it up. So our
Yep.
takeouts from today are, we spoke about illegal incomes and illegal structures.
Yes.
Our takeouts are, they exist.
Mm-hmm.
Our takeouts are that the people that are generally pretty risk adverse, like the older European sort of people, which is why the insurance example came out at the end, it generally has not bitten them on the bum. We do not promote illegal incomes. We do not support illegal structures. We understand but we understand that if you want to be really, really super compliant in this world, we don't think you're gonna live either, because it's very, very hard to be completely compliant. So speak to your lawyer, get good advice on legal incomes, legal structures.
And speak to a lawyer who's got property and doing it. God, like the amount of times a client is speaking to a lawyer and they've never bought a property in their life, they do this, they're not going to give you practical advice.
Understand your risks.
You know,
understand your risks, you're going to take them. And if you're going to get advice not from someone who's actually taken those risks. That's our takeouts. Anything else you want to add, Michael?
No, Todd said, love the analogy, investing insurance. Thank you for watching, Todd and Mel. Always a pleasure. Lots of people on today.
You guys are legends.
This will be on podcast. We'll share it. You can watch it. We'll be back tomorrow morning. Also, guys, share and win to help incentivize people sharing. We withdraw $50 every Saturday as a little cash bonus for helping people. We feel this is knowledge people can't get anywhere. We love doing it. We love helping people. Lisa, thanks for tuning in, and we'll speak to everyone soon. Adios.
Sponsor me on my ride.
Sponsor everyone who's right, and happy birthday to my nonna, 90 today. You.
Hey, happy birthday, nonna.
Yeah, 90 years old, so she's going strong. So I'll be giving her a call now.
All right.
All righty.
Happy birthday,
Thank
nonna.
you.
See ya.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.